HOA President Patricia called cops on me for illegally occupying my inherited lake cabin, threatening to make my life miserable. What she didn't know. I own the water rights to Crystal Lake. Every dock, boat launch and swimming area in her development sits on MY property. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. The moving truck was halfway up the gravel road to my grandfather's cabin when I saw her marching toward us like a woman on a mission. She was maybe 55, with perfectly styled hair that probably took an hour to arrange, wearing clothes that screamed, "I demand to speak to your manager." Her face was already twisted with righteous anger before she even reached the truck. I was directing the movers where to place my furniture when she planted herself directly in front of the truck, hands on her hips like she owned the entire mountain. "Excuse me," she shouted, loud enough to scare the birds from nearby trees. "You cannot park that vehicle here." I climbed down from the truck bed where I'd been securing a load of boxes. "Ma'am, this is a private road to my cabin. We're just moving my belongings in." She looked me up and down with obvious disgust. I was wearing work clothes, jeans, boots, and a flannel shirt, not exactly the outfit she expected to see in what she probably considered her exclusive neighborhood. "Your cabin?" she laughed, a sharp sound with no humor in it. "I don't think so. I'm Patricia Huntington, president of the Crystal Lake Homeowners Association. I know every property owner in this area, and you're not one of them." I pulled out my phone and showed her the deed transfer documents I'd signed the week before. "Alex Thompson. I inherited this property from my grandfather, Robert Thompson. He built this cabin in 1962. Patricia barely glanced at the documents. "Fake papers. Anyone can print documents these days. This is obviously some kind of scam." The moving crew was watching this exchange with growing amusement. The lead mover, a guy named Frank who'd been doing this for 20 years, shook his head and went back to unloading furniture. "Ma'am," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "I can show you the county records, the tax assessments, the utility transfers." "I don't care what fake documents you have," Patricia interrupted. "This is a respectable community. We don't allow squatters or trespassers. I'm calling the police right now." She pulled out her phone and dialed 911 with theatrical flair, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I need police at Crystal Lake Road immediately. There's a group of people trying to break into a cabin with a moving truck. They're claiming to own property they obviously don't. They could be dangerous." I watched in amazement as she described me and the moving crew like we were some kind of criminal gang. According to Patricia's version, we were probably armed and definitely dangerous, attempting to illegally occupy a valuable lakefront property. "They'll be here in 10 minutes, she announced smugly. "We'll see how tough you are when real authority arrives." Frank the mover walked over to me. "Boss, you want us to keep working or wait for the cops?" "Keep working," I said. "This is my property and I have every right to be here." Patricia's face turned red. "You're making this worse for yourself. The police will arrest all of you." That's when I noticed other people coming out of nearby cabins to watch the show. Word was spreading fast through the community that someone was breaking into the old Thompson place. An elderly man from the cabin next door walked over with a confused expression. "Patricia, what's all the shouting about?" "Harold, these people are trying to steal the Thompson cabin. They have fake documents and everything." Harold looked at me more carefully, then his face lit up with recognition. "Alex? Alex Thompson? Good Lord, you look just like your grandfather did at your age." Patricia's confidence wavered slightly. "You know this person?" "Know him? I watched him grow up. Robert was my best friend for 40 years. "Alex, I'm so sorry about your grandfather. He was a good man." "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. He talked about you all the time." Patricia was looking back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. "That doesn't prove anything. Anyone could claim to be related to Robert Thompson." Harold shook his head. "Patricia, you've lived here for what, 5 years? Alex has been coming to this cabin every summer since he was a kid. I have pictures of him fishing off our dock with his grandfather." More neighbors were gathering now, and I could see recognition dawning on several faces. These were people who'd known my grandfather, who'd watched me grow up during summer visits. Mrs. Chun from 2 cabins down called out, "Alex? Your grandfather would be so happy to know you're keeping the cabin in the family." Patricia was starting to look less confident, but she doubled down. "I don't care who you people think he is. The HOA has authority over this entire area, and I haven't approved any new residents." That's when I almost started laughing. "Ma'am, what exactly do you think gives your HOA authority over my property?" "We control the entire Crystal Lake community. Every property, every road, every access point. Harold looked at her with pity. Patricia, honey, the Thompson cabin isn't part of your HOA. It never was. Robert built that place 20 years before your development even existed. That's impossible. I pulled out another document from my truck. This is the original land survey from 1962. My grandfather owned 47 acres, including 800 feet of lakefront. Your development was built on land he sold to the developer in 1987, but he kept the cabin and the prime waterfront. Patricia grabbed the survey and studied it frantically. I could see the moment reality hit her. Her face went white as she realized her mistake. But instead of backing down, she got more aggressive. Well, you still can't access your property through our community roads. Actually, I said calmly, I can. There's an easement agreement from 1987 that guarantees access to the Thompson property through what's now your community. It's recorded with the county. The police arrived just as Patricia was processing this information. 2 officers got out of their patrol car, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Small-town cops dealt with a lot of neighbor disputes, and they could usually tell the difference between real crimes and suburban drama. Ma'am, the lead officer said to Patricia, you reported a break-in? Yes. These people are illegally occupying the Thompson cabin. The officer looked at the moving truck, the furniture being carried inside, and the crowd of neighbors who were clearly on my side. Sir, can you show me some identification and proof of ownership? I handed over my driver's license, the deed, the survey, and the utility transfer documents. The officer examined everything carefully while Patricia tapped her foot impatiently. Everything looks in order, the officer said finally. Mr. Thompson, welcome to Crystal Lake. Thank you, officer. The policeman turned to Patricia with barely concealed annoyance. Ma'am, this gentleman has every right to be here. Filing false police reports is a misdemeanor. False reports? I was protecting the community. You were harassing a property owner. I suggest you go home and let these people finish their move. As the police drove away, Patricia stood in the middle of the road, clearly struggling with the fact that her authority meant nothing here. But she wasn't done yet. This isn't over, she announced. The HOA will make your life miserable. We control access to the lake, the boat launch, everything. You'll regret buying this place. That's when I smiled for the first time since this whole thing started. Actually, Patricia, we need to talk about the lake. What about it? I pulled out one more document, this one much older and more official looking. This is the original mineral and water rights deed from 1960. When my great-grandfather bought this land from the state, he acquired all water rights to Crystal Lake. Harold's eyebrows shot up. Robert never mentioned that. Grandpa was modest about it. But legally, I own the lake bed and all water rights. Your HOA has been using my lake for 25 years without permission. Patricia's face went through several colors before settling on a sickly green. That's impossible. Ma'am, call your real estate attorney. Have them research the water rights on Crystal Lake. They'll confirm everything I just told you. The crowd of neighbors was dead silent. Even Harold looked shocked. So what does that mean? Mrs. Chin asked quietly. It means, I said looking directly at Patricia, that every boat launch, every dock, every swimming area in your development is on my property. Your HOA has been trespassing for decades. Patricia started to speak, but no words came out. Now, I'm a reasonable person, I continued. My grandfather obviously didn't mind sharing the lake with good neighbors. But harassment? Calling the police on me? Threatening to make my life miserable? That's not very neighborly. Frank the mover walked over with a clipboard. Boss, we're all unloaded. You need to sign here. I signed the papers while Patricia stood frozen in the road, apparently processing the fact that she just threatened the person who owned the lake her entire community was built around. Patricia, I said after the movers left, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home and call an emergency HOA meeting. You're going to explain to your board that you harassed the owner of Crystal Lake. And then you're going to resign as president. You can't make me resign. No, but I can revoke your HOA's access to the lake. All of it. Boat launches, swimming areas, fishing spots. Everything. Then you can explain to your neighbors why their waterfront property is suddenly landlocked. Harold whistled low. Alex, that would destroy property values throughout the entire development. I know. Which is why I don't want to do it. But I also won't tolerate harassment. Patricia finally found her voice. What do you want? I want a formal apology. I want a guarantee that no HOA member will harass me or my guests. And I want you to stop abusing whatever little authority you think you have. And if I don't? I pulled out my phone and showed her a contact. This is my attorney. He specializes in water rights law. One phone call and your entire community loses lake access permanently. The color drained from Patricia's face as she realized I wasn't bluffing. Mrs. Chin stepped forward. Alex, most of us had no idea Patricia was causing problems. We just want to be good neighbors. I know, Mrs. Chin. This isn't about the community. It's about people who think they can bully others without consequences. Harold nodded approvingly. Your grandfather would have handled it the same way. Firm but fair. Patricia looked around at the crowd of neighbors, reading the writing on the wall. They were all on my side now and she was completely isolated. I apologize, she said quietly. I made a mistake. Louder, I said. So everyone can hear. I apologize, she said, her voice cracking. I was wrong to call the police and harass you. And I'll resign as HOA president. Good. Harold, would you mind serving as interim president until they can hold elections? Harold looked surprised but pleased. I'd be honored. As the crowd dispersed, Patricia slunk back to her cabin like a deflated balloon. The show was over and she'd lost spectacularly. Over the next few weeks, I learned more about Patricia's reign of terror as HOA president. She'd been fining people for ridiculous violations, threatening lawsuits over minor infractions, and generally making everyone's life miserable. My arrival had given the community a chance to finally push back. Harold became the permanent HOA president after a unanimous election. His first act was to revise the community rules to focus on actual problems rather than petty power trips. Mrs. Chin organized a welcome party for me, and I got to meet all my new neighbors properly. They were good people who'd been suffering under Patricia's tyranny for years. Patricia lasted another month before putting her cabin up for sale and moving away. Apparently, being stripped of her power and humiliated in front of the entire community was more than her ego could handle. The new buyer was a retired teacher who just wanted to fish and read books on her porch. A massive improvement. I settled into cabin life, working remotely and enjoying the peace my grandfather had loved. But I also took my responsibilities as lake owner seriously. I had a proper survey done to establish the exact boundaries of my water rights. Then I worked with the HOA to create a formal lake usage agreement that protected both my rights and their access. The agreement included reasonable rules for boat use, swimming areas, and fishing spots. But it also included strict provisions against harassment and discrimination. Anyone who violated the community standards could lose their lake privileges. Harold helped draft the agreement, making sure it was fair to everyone. Your grandfather would be proud, he told me. You're using your power to help the community, not control it. 6 months later, Crystal Lake was a completely different place. Property values actually increased because word spread about the new, reasonable HOA leadership. People started recommending the community to friends instead of warning them away. I started an annual fishing tournament in my grandfather's memory, with proceeds going to local youth programs. The whole community participated, even people who'd never fished before. The lake became what it was always meant to be, a gathering place for people who respected each other and the natural beauty around them. Sometimes I'd sit on my dock in the evening, watching the sunset paint the water gold and red, and think about Patricia's threat to make my life miserable. Instead, she'd given me the opportunity to make life better for everyone. The lesson spread beyond Crystal Lake. Other communities started questioning their HOA boards, demanding transparency and accountability. Patricia's spectacular failure became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked authority. I never did have to revoke the community's lake access. The threat was enough to restore balance and respect. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one you never have to use. My grandfather had taught me that real power comes with responsibility. You use it to protect people, not to control them. You build communities up, not tear them down. Patricia had learned the hard way that bullying only works until you pick on someone with bigger weapons than you have. In her case, she tried to intimidate someone who literally owned the thing her entire community was built around. The lake still sparkles in the morning sun just like it did when my grandfather was a boy. But now it's protected by someone who understands that true authority comes from service, not selfishness. And every time a loon calls across the water at sunset, I remember the day in HOA Karen learned that sometimes the person you're harassing owns everything you think you control. Sometimes justice comes in the form of handcuffs. Sometimes it comes in the form of resignation letters. And sometimes, it comes in the form of realizing that the quiet person you're threatening has the power to take away everything you value. Patricia Huntington learned all 3 lessons in one very educational afternoon by the lake.